Yo guys, what's going on? My name is HackingIsFreedom and welcome to the 24th episode of What Was Cut, a series where we take a look at what exactly was cut from our favorite games. Today we're going to be talking about Jackass, the game. This is actually a game that I played much later in its life cycle, because I think I was like 9 years old when this game actually released. But I believe I played it again when I was like 16 or 17, and I thought it was a pretty good game. Once I watched the Jackass films though, I knew I had to check this game out. Looking back at it now though, it really isn't that good of a game overall. But hey, it's Jackass. Poor gameplay is part of the hilarity. Anywho, let's do some stupid stunts and figure out what was cut.
Yeah, dude.
First up, we're going to be talking about the unused textures, and surprisingly, we have a lot of placeholder textures left in the game's files, so let's go over those first. This first one is a pretty interesting placeholder loading screen. These two are placeholder icons for whatever objective you're currently on. This one is a placeholder background for the title screen. There's also two placeholder images for the developer's splash screen and the publisher's splash screen as well. The legal screen was just this simple placeholder. This next one is actually pretty cool. This seems to be a placeholder texture for a completely cut stunt called Training. There isn't anything else left over from the stunt other than some text strings. It might be a bit hard to see, but the character model used in this mode is literally a skeleton, pretty similar to Dem Bones from Skate 3, and he seems to be standing on top of a bus. So perhaps this mode was a vehicle surfing minigame, similar to the one seen in the Saints Row series. There's also another placeholder texture for another cut stunt called Urban Bungee, and there's still a little bit of text strings left over for this mode as well. Again, it may be a bit hard to see, but it seems the picture depicts Steve-O bungee jumping from either the top of the Golden Gate Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge. This image is a placeholder for the X-rays that show up when injuring your character. These three medals are actually from the PSP version of the game, but for some reason they're left over in the PS2 version as well. There's also a placeholder texture for completing a stunt, a placeholder texture for the unlockable props. There's also a placeholder for the pictures of the Jackass crew. It's actually unknown where this placeholder texture was originally used, but it's labeled as NYC Pogo Test, so my guess is it was used as a placeholder loading screen for the New York Pogo stunt. This last placeholder texture is a bit unknown as well, but I believe it was used as a placeholder for the various TVs seen around the game, like the one seen in the background of Party Boy's level or the TV seen in the title screen when selecting a stunt. Getting away from the placeholders now, this is an early version of the title screen, and I honestly like this version a lot more than the weird blue background we got in the final game. This texture is apparently another background, but I have no idea where it was supposed to be used. I'm not sure if it's corrupted or if this is just what the texture looks like, as I've dumped it myself and the texture still came out the same. It's simply labeled as BG1, which means background 1, so sadly the name doesn't give us any more information. The generally inspired bumper car and golf cart used to have the iconic 01 on the side, which you can actually see here in these renders. However, this reference was completely removed from the final game, most likely for copyright reasons. This is an unused icon for the Jackass voiceover footage, which suggests this was going to be another purchasable item in the Jackass Mart alongside the other movies you can buy. These 5 textures were all used in the beta version, but for some reason they were cut out of the final game. These are just additional building and window textures for the New York Pogo stunt area, although I have no idea why they were cut. There's a strange cut minigame called Puppeteer, and this did feature on the PSP version, however it was basically a bare bones model viewer. All of these icons were for the area you would go to pose and basically make your own stunt, and there's also a finished loading screen for this mode, which kinda suggests that this was going to be a lot more advanced than the one on the PSP. And this text here suggests that the Puppeteer mode was going to be on the main menu, not in a subsection. So apparently it was going to be a pretty important feature. It seems like you were able to view the stunts and minigames before they were unlocked, as this texture is for the TV that shows up when selecting a stunt. Since you obviously can't do this at all, this texture is never seen. These two small objective icons went unused in the final game, but I honestly have no idea what they were used for. The one on the left is obviously for the extreme unicycling, but the other one is an MTV Games logo, which is pretty strange. Other than a placeholder, I'm not really sure what the MTV Games icon could have been used for. In the beta version of the game, the Big Ball stunt loading screen features a drawing of one of the balls going off the roof and hitting a water tower. This wasn't even a requirement in the beta, so it was most likely cut because it was just unnecessary to have, and most likely players probably thought that you needed to do this. The fridge prop in the beta build was a bit cleaner and a bit more rounded than the final game. I honestly have no idea why they decided to change this. I think the beta fridge just looks a lot better. Finally, we have these 3 textures, and these are all leftovers from the PSP version. They mainly feature the director mode, and why they're here in the PS2 version is completely unknown. But my guess is they were most likely testing the functionality of downloading custom stunts, and they just decided to use these as placeholders. It's time for the changes to various characters, as well as some cut ones. So these first 4 icons are of Johnny Knoxville, and I assume that these were used as placeholders for costumes you can unlock when progressing through the game. This is an earlier version of the character selection icon for Preston Lacey, and it looks very basic and unfinished. We also have an earlier version of the character selection icon for Steve-O. This seems to be a very early render of Steve-O, as he's missing a lot of his tattoos, his banana hammock isn't textured, and it's a bit hard to see, but his fingers seem to be either morphed into his hand or just completely cut off. I'm not really sure. Speaking of Stevo, I think he went through the most changes, as this texture here is an early version of his facial textures. It seems to be a scan of an actual photo. As you can tell, this looks extremely realistic for a PS2 game, but this was most likely used as a reference for his facial design. This early texture is also just weirdly labeled as Custom 3. Stevo also had his pot leaf tattoos removed in the final game, which is a very strange decision for an 18+ or an M-rated game. The attendant had a third costume in the beta build that's a bit different than the final build. His outfit originally said paramedic rather than staff. His pants were a bit of a darker blue, and it seems like he had a watch on his upper arm. The cop outfits for Johnny Knoxville and Dave England originally didn't have mustaches in the beta. They just look really weird without the mustaches. It seems like Wee Man was once planned to be a playable character, as he has 5 unused icons for him in different outfits. He would have actually been available in multiplayer and story mode, judging by some of the text strings. But other than that, he's sadly a background character in the main game. The director in the beta build is actually a very early version of Jeff Tremaine, with a very basic looking design, and he would have only been available in multiplayer. These 11 character icons can be found in an unused folder in the beta build's files, and with these we can see a bunch of super early renders for some of the characters. The most notable one here is the inclusion of Bam Margera, because as you can see by these leftover text strings, he was supposed to be included in the final game as a playable character. However, he was actually cut real early in development, as this is basically the only reference to him left. Although this is most likely because when this game released, he was under contract with Neversoft and Activision because he was a featured skater in the Tony Hawk series. Last up is a completely cut character called Victor, and he's oddly fully playable in the beta build. This text string is actually the only thing that's still left over in the final game, but we can see a lot more of him in the beta build. I tried to do some research on who this actually is, but it came up pretty short. I'm not sure if this was just a joke character, or if this guy actually has correlation to the Jackass crew, but he seems very out of place. Another strange thing is, he has unused injured textures in the files of the beta build, yet he reuses Jeff Tremaine's, which is very strange. We're now going to talk about the changes done to the various stunts. There's a lot of stunts and a lot of minor differences, so I'm just going to go through some of the ones I find more interesting. First up, we have San Fran Trash Can, and not much was changed from this stunt, but you can see the beta version lacked the rainbow in the background. The parked cars in the beta version only used 2 colors, which are green and white, and the building here on the left side had a few antennas on the roof. The goal was only slightly changed up as well, and the only song featured in this stunt was a song called Read Between the Lies by Civilian Down, while the final game features 3. Nude Country by Cake Cutters, Sitting Pretty by the Dotsons, and I Hate People by Anti-Nowhere League. Honestly, I couldn't find the existence of that song by Civilian Down anywhere. All the results I kept getting were for Slayer's song of the same name. This right here is literally all the information I could find about this so-called band. Their website is also defunct, and the MySpace link just brings you to a blank page. Elephant Poo Dive originally had a much bluer looking background, a bit of a different camera angle, the extra digit at the beginning was removed, and this stunt only featured the song What Would I Know by the Dotsons, while the final game featured 3, Live Fast Die Young by Circle Jerks, Nude Country, and Do the Flop by Smut Peddlers. New York Pogo had 2 water towers added in the background in the final game, but for some reason in the beta build, the windows were completely missing their textures. Hate and Whiskey by Nashville Pussy was the only song featured here, while the final game had Prince of the Rodeo by Turbo Negro, wow, Jesus Christ, what a name, Wall by Balzac, and What Would I Know by the Dotsons. Rock Paper Nuts was pretty much complete, although Wee Man was missing his scepter in the beta build, and the only song featured here was Born to Run by the Casanovas. The final game has Come On by Nashville Pussy, If You're Gonna Be Dumb, You Gotta Be Tough by Roger Allen Wade, and I'm Gonna Live by Circle Jerks. Poo Shower pretty much remained the same. The background in the beta build was just more basic, and both of the goals for challenge mode and story mode were slightly increased. Political was the only song used in the beta, but the final game used Coppers by Circle Jerks, Do the Flop, and Drink for Free by the Virginia City Revival. Egg Gulp was pretty much complete as well, with only some very minor changes, like the bucket being in a much lower quality, the fill meter used to have notches on the sides, each goal was increased by 1, and of course, only one song was featured here as well, which was Sittin' Pretty by the Dotsons. The final game uses Hate and Whiskey, If You're Gonna Be Dumb, You Gotta Be Tough, and Friend by The Marginal Man. Fridge Rider was complete as well, just the bottom 2 objectives were swapped, and the text for the second objective was made a bit more clearer. Sittin' Pretty was the only song used here, while the final game had the same song, Political, and Coppers. Wee Tattoo was actually changed quite a bit. The background was extremely basic in both scenes, lacking a lot of the detail. The tattoo itself was changed from a grenade to Stevo's face, the story and challenge goals were made a little harder, and once again, only one song was played here, that being Come On by Nashville Pussy. The final game uses Friend, Spinal Remains by Misfits, and Swamp Boogie by Chris Pontius. The main thing changed in Extreme Unicycling was its textures. As you can see by the comparison, everything was pretty much brighter in the beta, and the barrels used a completely different texture. The skybox was changed too, with the beta version honestly looking a lot higher res than the final game. Suburban wakeboarding wasn't changed too much. It seems the beta used a closer camera angle, the car's window texture was a bit brighter, the fence on the right side of the road was added in the final game. You're attached to a winch in the final game, but in the beta build you're tied to the trailer hitch. The goals for both story mode and challenge mode were increased slightly, and of course, one song was featured here too, that being Ready or Not by Tokyo Dragons. The final game uses Political, Live Fast Die Young, and Self-Destruct Bust. Roof Race originally had a more evening style of skybox, while the final games is pretty much like Midnight. The only other main difference is the effects for the electricity. It's basically non-existent in the beta build. Born to Run was the only song used in the beta, while the final game used Prince of the Rodeo, Self-Destruct Bust, and What Would I Know. Extreme Juggling, I say, was the second most complete. Very minor changes were done here, like the removal of flies around Wee Man and the position of the counter. The story mode and challenge mode goals were both increased, and the song featured in the beta was Team Police by Deja Voodoo. The final game uses Friend, Hate and Whiskey, and Spinal Remains. Super Bold pretty much just used a different skybox, with the beta version looking much clearer. Songs, of course, were a bit different too. The beta featured Team Police, while the final game featured Sittin' Pretty, Swamp Boogie, and Urban Struggle. Finally, we have both Party Boy scenes. The first one wasn't changed up all that much. The lighting was just toned down a bit, the middle light was turned off, probably to see the buttons better, and the goals were much harder. The second Party Boy scene was highly unfinished, at least the background was, and the challenge mode goals were reduced by quite a lot. It's actually a great thing that they reduced it, because I tried playing that first Party Boy sequence, oh my god. I only missed like 3 notes and I got like 1260 points, I think. It was actually ridiculous. To get 1500 points to gold that is actually really hard. Sounds and Voicelines are up next, and we're going to go over the sound effects first. There's only 3, and they're all for completing goals. So, this first one is labeled as Award Generic, and this is the beta sound, compared to the final. This next one is labeled as Award Gold. And the last one is labeled as Goal Achieved. On to the voice lines. Remember I said Bam Margera was cut real early in development? Well, there's actually an entire folder full of voice lines all labeled with voice Bam, but sadly, it isn't actually him. These are all temp lines spoken by Dmitry Eliaskovich. Take a listen.
Fuck! Fuck you. Ah, fuck it. You fucking idiot. Fucking crazy bastard. You fucking retard. Woohoo! Yeah! Alright! What the hell? What's going on? Whoa! Yeah! Whoa! Oh, oh. Ah, ah. Oh, oh. Oh, oh. Ah. Oh, oh. Ah, fuck. Ah, shit. Jesus. Oh, shit. Oh, yuck. Ah! 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 Bring it on, pussy. Come on. Show me what you got. Who wants some? It's rock and roll time. I'm surrounded by a bunch of idiots. Who wants a piece of me? I'm surrounded by pussies. Come on, you fuckers.
There's also a few voice lines from the director's tips that play throughout the various stunts. And these aren't in Jeff Tremaine's voice either, suggesting this was just another developer using temp lines.
So I hear you're taking over while I rest my balls in the hospital. I need you to play through the stunts so we can collect footage for the episodes. And boosting the TV ratings with more action in the stunts generates more revenue from the advertisers, making us more money. When MTV has enough footage, they'll sign the episode off and commission the next. So don't f*** up, okay? That first episode was good, but don't get f***ing cocky. Let's kick it up a notch. Try to bail out in some stunts by pressing triangle. Watching those whiny bitches get hurt always makes for great television. Hey, you there? I hope you've been reviewing all the action you've been getting. Hey, remember you can fast forward, rewind, and pause your replays. Hell, you can even watch the pain in slow-mo. If you really want to show those guys how to make great TV, how about you get the boys to take on challenge mode? The stunts are tougher and the pain is even greater. Ha ha! Yeah! Hey, you've been getting some pretty mad footage together, and it's coming along nicely. If you haven't already, use some of the other guys. Get them to change their look. I hate it when I'm piecing together a show and I've realized I've missed an important shot. Hope you haven't done the same thing. If you have, No problem. Tell the boys to get off their asses and retry some of those previous stunts. To go back to previous episodes, use the left shoulder button. You're almost done. An entire season of Jackass, and they didn't pull the plug. Now that's an awesome effort, if you ask me. MTV are totally stoked with how the ratings are going. This is it, the final episode. Go and make it a classic, boys.
There's also 2 temp voice lines for Steve-O, which clearly isn't Steve-O.
I haven't touched a single drink all day, I promise.
These can actually be heard in the beta build in the Wii Tattoo minigame. Finally, there's a single temp voice line from the attendant.
Oh, fuck.
And this can also be heard in the beta build in the Golf Rally minigame. As we come to the end of the video, it's time for the oddities I found throughout the game. All of the props in the Jackass Mart are literally named after their real-life counterparts. Like the Guzzler golf cart was originally called a Hummer golf cart, the Liberator was simply called a Jeep golf cart, and the Ball o' Death was named the Star o' Death. I'm sure these names just had to be changed for copyright reasons. There's a small list in the game files that references some cut stunts. Remember at the beginning of the video I showed off this texture and I mentioned it was probably some sort of bus surfing mode? Well, bus surfing is listed here, but there is also a mode called training, so I wonder if that texture was just labeled incorrectly, as that one was obviously for this bus mode. The PUSSY bumper car is named Knight Rider internally, just in case you needed more proof that it was based off of Kit. There's some strange text strings in the files that references PC saving. This game has never been on the PC, so it's a bit strange to see here. Unless this is from a super early development stage where the game was still being built on the PS2 tools, which was basically a big PC. The funniest thing here is this little message telling you to not gnaw at the cables. In the beta build, which was only 4 months away from release, Preston Lacey's name is misspelt. It's actually kinda crazy to see that being so close to release. These 2 photos of the Jackass crew were supposed to be seen in the gallery under the extras menu, but they got cut. You can, however, still see this first one in-game in the slideshow section of the Jackass Mart. However, I'm guessing that these were both removed because they both feature a picture of Bam. The last oddity I have for you is this placeholder video. I don't really know where this was originally used. It could have been used as a title screen placeholder, or since Pogo comes up, it could have been used as a placeholder video for the New York Pogo stunt. And that's all I have for Jackass the game. I'm kinda curious to see how many people watch this video because I know this game wasn't received well by fans, and it's really not that popular. I thought it was an interesting game to cover, and I was actually pretty surprised at the amount of placeholder textures left over, so I figured, hey, why not? Plus, my bigger projects like Little Big Planet 2, the Saints Row series, and the older GTAs have been in the works for a little while now, and hopefully soon they should be ready to go. There's actually just so much shit to check in those games, and with Little Big Planet 2, there's like 5 different beta builds I need to go through thoroughly. But until then, I decided to do some smaller projects in between. This video actually should have been out last week, but I was quite busy with shopping for Christmas presents. Anywho, if you have a suggestion for the next What Was Cut episode, please feel free to comment down below. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.